FOMO.
My name is Patrick J. McGinnis, and I'm a FOMO Sapiens. And since you're here, I'm going to bet that you are too. And when you're like us and Monday comes around, you don't dread the new week. No, you wake up every Monday morning knowing that this week might just be the best one yet. This is FOMOnday, the snackable show that starts your week right with hot takes, life hacks, listener mail, and even some FOMO therapy. Hey everybody, this is FOMOnday, the snackable companion to FOMO Sapiens, which of course will be back on Thursday with another full episode. But until then, happy FOMOnday, best day of the week. I'm your host, Patrick J. McGinnis, venture capitalist by day, author and podcaster by night, and FOMO Sapiens 24/7. Now, a little while ago, I went down to Florida to speak at an event for this company called Coastal Wealth, which is a really interesting company. You're going to hear about it in a minute. But at this event, I met the guy who started the business. His name is Jeremy Straub. And Jeremy talked about something that happened to him that I found to be incredibly interesting, surprising, inspiring, something that could happen to any of us. And the way he responded and what he's learned from it was something that I wanted to share with all of you because it just was a story that I can't stop thinking about. Now, Jeremy Straub is the CEO and founder of Coastal Wealth, and he's the host of the Youpreneur podcast, which I was so lucky to be on. He's passionate about entrepreneurship in finance, and he's devoted his passions to pioneering a way to fix the flaws in the wealth management industry. Jeremy shares his passion and knowledge for finance and entrepreneurship by contributing to the world-renowned networks and publications that he writes for, and of course, by hosting his podcast. All right, welcome, Jeremy.
Patrick, happy to be here. Good to see you again.
Good to be with you. So glad you're here. Okay, before we get into the whole story that we're going to tell today, why don't you tell everybody about what you do?
So Coastal Wealth is a full services financial services company. We have over 400 financial advisors throughout the country with about 70 plus offices from managing money, about 15, 20 billion in assets to doing full blown financial planning. That's kind of the core business of what I got.
Yeah, it's an amazing company. I was fortunate enough to spend some time with you and the company down at your offsite in Florida. And, it's amazing because you're just like $20 billion, a lot of money. It's like, what? Well done. And talk about the podcast while I have you, because I think, we have a crowd that likes podcasts. So we'll talk about what got you to start that podcast.
Youpreneur, I started just to be able to kind of deconstruct Florida, because I live in Florida, business owners down here in Florida, and really learn kind of what makes them tick and how they grew. And then I'm actually just launching a new podcast that actually started from some of the conversation we're going to have today called Mindset Meets Money, and has to do with why people make decisions with their money and some of the biases you might have in help or stopping you from making good decisions with your money.
All right. So I would accuse you of having FOMO for having two podcasts, but when you talk about why, people are going to get it. So let's go back in time. Let's go back a year, a little bit over a year. You had something very unexpected happen to you. Talk about what happened to you.
Sure. So I just got back from a 2-week sailing trip in the BVI's, was feeling pretty good about life and pretty excited. Went out to dinner and ended up ordering a bottle of wine, and somebody had come back and said it was a bad bottle of wine. And I said, well, why don't you, I don't know anything about wine. I can't even tell the difference between boxed wine and nice wine, right? So I'm like, bring the bad bottle over with the good bottle and let me taste the difference. Long story short, had allergic reaction to the bad bottle of wine. Ended up in the hospital in the ER and found out that I had stage 4 throat cancer. And my life kind of got turned upside down and started down the journey of trying to be able to address that issue while thinking about and reevaluating a lot of things in my life.
I remember you said something because I watched you talk about this. I watched a speech you gave, and you talk about being in the room with the person, the doctor, and the doctor got up physically, sort of she was moved, and she said, she said something to you that really stuck with me about sort of knowing where you're going. So talk about, because that really blew my mind.
Sure. So she it was like a doctor in her 40s. She comes in, and we ended up knowing a lot of the same people. I knew a lot of people in the hospital. So we were having conversations beforehand, built a little relationship. And when she came in, she goes, you want me to shoot you straight or beat around the bush? And I'm like, well, this doesn't sound great. Why don't you shoot me straight? And then I could see her eyes starting to build up with a little bit of tears. And I asked her to sit down next to me. I'm like, Doc, you're scaring me. What's going on? She goes, well, do you have any family close? And I said, not really, but why don't you tell me what's happening? And she looked at me and she goes, it's going to be cancer. We're going to admit you in over the night. And I'm like, are you sure? You just did one check and one scan. And she's like, oh, I'm 98% sure, but we'll double check and see. But it's I just want to prepare you for that if you want to call anybody. It's like 1 or 2 in the morning. Unfortunately, I actually called my ex-wife and had her come in. Luckily, I've kept a good relationship with her, and that was the closest person I had. But she came in later that night. But yeah, it was a crazy turn of events from what I expected, and from feeling really good about how my life was a week before, to all of a sudden a doctor saying that, it completely changes where your priorities are, changes what you think you want out of life, and it completely changes your perspective on who and where you want to spend your time.
Yeah, that's the story that I remember, and I think about that. I haven't forgotten. I think about this a lot because it blew my mind. And the good news, of course, is now we're a year later. And you were able to announce at this offsite I was at that the cancer is gone. And so you've been through this process of treatment. But in that process, you've also learned a lot about yourself and about the world around you. So what I'd love to know is, how did you react? Like, there's no manual, right? We all think we react one way or another, but how did you figure out what to do next? And was there anything that surprised you in that process?
So a lot of people would give advice saying, this is mental as much as it is physical. And I didn't completely get that at first. And I think, although, I've had people in my family, my mom, my grandma both had breast cancer, and my grandfather had lung cancer. Like I've experienced it, but I never understood or could appreciate what it's like being on the other side. And so, when it happened, people shared the mental piece to it. And in the beginning, I kind of just was like, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. And one of the things I did, I think, well, that a lot of people don't do is I didn't Google anything. I didn't look up anything. Instead, I grabbed, one of my close buddies, a neurosurgeon, somebody I know is extremely analytical, loves researching, to do all the research for me. And I leaned on a couple professionals or people that I trusted to help me navigate the different hospital visits and that, than opposed to me reading and scaring the hell out of myself from Googling, going down these certain wormholes. Then after that, then it started to set in as I started to do some hospital visits and really kind of, that this could be something that's a lot bigger than I'm making it out of my mind. And so when I chose the hospital I was going to New York City, and I was fortunate enough to be able to live there for a few months and go through treatment. I ended up having 8 weeks of radiation every day, and then 3 rounds of chemo during that time period too. But in choosing going to doctors, that's where it started to hit me and said, all right, now this is getting serious. And right before I left for New York, I had to speak in front of my company. It just happened to be a timing of a big event. So I'm in front of like 600-700 people telling them what happened to me. And part of what I've always done in business is kind of define reality while painting a picture of hope and optimism. And so I was able to tell them what was happening. But in my mind, I just never let myself go to a negative spot. And I kind of painted the picture of optimism in my head. And then once I started going through treatment, that's where I kind of got punched in the face a couple of times. And, we can go into that if you want to, or what you want me to hit on. But that's where all of a sudden I started to question it and go, wow, was I a little too optimistic here? Did I screw up on my thoughts? I think, being in business and an entrepreneur, you're kind of this eternal optimist all the time, which I think that mindset really helped me in being able to be okay early on. But I think it got tried. And then along with that, I spent a lot of time learning about emotional intelligence over the last 20 years. And I think that ability to be able to manage my emotions made a difference on it. But yeah, that's kind of the odd part where I got a renewed vigor about my business on it was after I realized what I had and had to address it. The next big fear I had in my head was like, are my kids going to be okay? And did I do everything right? I mean, I'm in finance. I used to be a financial advisor before I ran the company. I figured I'd have everything, but then I go back and I'm ahead of my divorce going, did I change my beneficiaries? Did I make sure I paid that life insurance premium? Did I make sure that, I did enough forecasting to know that my kids are going to be okay and not have to go out of their school they're in or not be able to go to the college they're in or change their lifestyle? And, I had a panic call 3 days after I got diagnosed to my financial advisor, literally just asking if I'm okay. And, it was great for me to be able to hear from him. And it relieved a lot of stress for me, for him to walk me through and show me that I was going to be okay. And then I was able to not worry about financial stuff and go focus in on my health and time with my family as I was going through it, which was another big eye opener for me as I went through this process.
FOMO. Yeah, it's that is so important. I think, it's like, these are things that we don't think about on a daily basis, or we think about once we set it up and then we sort of don't think about it again. But even you're in the industry, right? It's like, it's so important to be, have the rainy day accounted for. I do want to hit on, you just mentioned that you had moments, because I think you're right. Like, people tell you like it's all mental, and obviously it's not all mental, but mental is so important. Of course it is, right? But being an optimist, as it's great until it starts to crack and something really bad happens. And then somebody who's the most optimistic person in the world the self-doubt can seep in, and then you can get into a place where you're spiraling and you're catastrophizing and stuff like that. So talk about, those times when you said that the whole process punched you in the face. How did you deal with it? How did you keep from going to the dark, dark, dark place?
So I ended up in the ER a couple of times just from, side effects of the treatment. One of the times I had really bad vertigo, couldn't even crawl without falling over. At the same time, the picture, like when I was looking at your face, it would jump around. And at the same time, I was extremely nauseous. And so it was an unsettling feeling not to be able to do anything. And I couldn't keep my eyes open. And then I ended up in the ER for a few days through that. And that was a time period where it's a very small chance from the chemo that can last forever. Right. And so, the doctor said, this is like you having, a liver issue from Advil. It says it on the bottle, but it never happens. We've never seen it, but it could be an effect. Let's see how it plays out. And that part kind of scared me, because in my mind, nothing bad was going to happen. I was just going to get cured from cancer on it. Getting through it was interesting. There's a couple pieces I would say. One is I was still working right before that and trying to just work through treatment. And what you don't appreciate is the stress that you have from work, from home, whatever it is. It actually has a physical toll on your body. And typically you're physically enough and able enough to be able to handle it. Well, the day I went into the ER with those issues, I was dealing with a big issue where a deal was about to blow up. And there was a big, acquisition we were looking at for a while. And it was a stressful conversation with the owners and going back and forth. And, I don't know if that pushed me over or not, or it's just bad timing. But I could tell you that after that, I stopped doing everything that was, work-related stress and reduced that. The second part to it is I was relatively open on social media for the people that kind of are connected to me. And this, like, I don't have a social media following, so this is just friends, family, people I know. And I was shocked by how many people had similar fights you never know about. People that had, big cancer fights, big issues with health scares, that were opening up to me and supporting me and giving me perspective or giving me thoughts of how they dealt with it. And again, I never knew they even dealt with it. These are people from maybe 10 years ago I touched their life or something like that reached out. And so, somebody told me when I got sick, you'll find out who your friends are. There are people that I thought would be, heavily there for me that, they're busy with life. I don't blame them at all. They're busy with life and, they thought about me, but they're so busy with kids and work and that. And then there are people that I didn't think would give a rat care that much about me. And they were so invested and engaged and, sent me stuff, even a daily text motivational thing on it that just, gave me different perspective. Or my one buddy happened to be with like John Bon Jovi, and he got John Bon Jovi to send a video to me, wishing me thanks and that, or wishing me luck. And it was just like those little things made a difference to realize how many lives I touched. And what I found was interesting. Early in my career, I spent a lot of time developing people, whether it was, business wise, but it always turned into individually. How do I help them become better, people in general, and tried to teach them the skills I learned to kind of navigate through life and business. Those were the people that cared the most and really leaned into, giving me attention and ideas to navigate through it. And as I moved up farther in my career, I spent so much time on strategy and, other stuff of doing deals that, you move away from things that might make a difference. And, for me, it's kind of given me this renewed vigor of going development of people. And then, the fact that I get to touch a lot of people through my company is is now a larger piece of my priority and kind of life mission than when I moved away from it for the last 10 years. So those were the things that kind of helped me out. Was one was, reducing stress and time. And then the second part was leaning in on that village. And it's not the people you might think it is that lean in. That being said, my mom was with me the whole time. So I was lucky that, and, family was still super close, but there were a lot of people that I didn't expect that really had an impact on me.
Yeah, as I'm thinking about this, so we always have people in our lives who are going through tough times. And it's like sometimes people disappear because they're busy. Sometimes they disappear because it taps into their own deep-seated fears of the unknown and the unexpected. It's like, you're like, if your life is already complicated and then you're afraid of something happening to you, like what's happening to the person, you might disappear. But, it takes so little to show up for somebody. Yeah, you can go to the extreme. You can be there every day for that person. But simply putting in a text, checking in with somebody, maybe they don't even respond because they're not in a place where they can do that right now. But, we all have chances to step up for the people around us, and it's worth doing. Now, I'd love to just get, for people listening, because I hate to say it, but, we live in reality. People on this podcast are going through stuff right now, or may soon be going through things. So, when that moment hits, I want them to think back to this moment. So what's your advice for people when they get news that's shocking and unexpected and they have to respond? What would be your advice to people who are listening?
The first part I would be is to make sure you have I'm going to use a business term like a board of directors, but you have a couple people that you really trust and value to help you navigate the decisions you have to make while you're in an emotional state. I would say that's one part that I would do, and I talked a little bit about that earlier. The second part is there's people that have gone through it before, and it's hard to find those people. And if you can put yourself in a situation to talk to some people. So as soon as I got sick, and people found out what I had, and I was public with it, I wasn't trying to hide it at all. I was okay with it. But doing that helped me a ton because I had at least 4 different people introduce me to somebody that went through the exact same cancer I went through, 1, 2, 3, 4 years beforehand. And hearing their stories, all of them are fine, hearing, what they had to do. Mine was, I probably screwed up. Mine was farther along than people caught theirs because I missed a couple signs I should have saw. But that gave me a lot of optimism because I was able to talk to people that went through it. And throughout that time period, there was another guy I met through an organization I'm part of. Him and I were both going through chemo at the same time. Somebody connected us to it. And him and I leaned on each other a lot during those few months. And literally texting every day or WhatsApp every day. And I still haven't met him in person. We're doing a road trip in Europe this summer. It'll be the first time I meet him in person. But I think about that. And that was like somebody that just kind of kept me connected. And then, for me, I tried not to be alone at all once I was going through the treatment. Having people around just to be able to occupy your time so your mind doesn't go too crazy on it. That was a piece. And then the last part I would say is I journaled a lot. And I tried to know where I was emotionally. I tried to talk myself through what it was. And as I saw trends and issues of how I was thinking, I was able to figure out the best way to address it. And so I spent a lot of time journaling. And then I journaled just so I don't forget stuff. As I start to get healthier and I start to feel much better, I'm like 90% there. A lot of the promises I made myself, I already catch myself not following through and actually not doing because you're not in that wartime battle, that heat of that moment of when you made those promises to yourself. So that's part of the reason I wrote everything down. And I keep trying to go back to make sure I keep focused in on those commitments I made.
That's fantastic. It's writing things down. I talk about it all the time as somebody who does that. And, I just recently found journals I wrote in college. And, it's also just valuable to see where your head was at. I read it and I'm like, it's just so interesting to see who I was, what's the same, what's different. But especially when you want to remember something important to you, having it written down and accessible, and then making sure to go look at it. It's really important. Now, Jeremy, you have all these podcasts, for goodness sake. Where can people find your stuff? Where can they learn more about you if they want to learn more about you?
You can check out the company, Coastal Wealth, or at mycoastalwealth.com. But you can check me out on Instagram, JM Straub, or on Twitter, Jeremy Straub. Although I don't use Twitter that much, so probably go to Instagram. It's probably the best.
Twitter's a bad place. And the podcasts are called?
Youpreneur, and with the letter U, and then Mindset Meets Money.
All right, everybody, go check it out. If you need, I'm going to plug you right now. If you need financial advisory, they do all kinds of nice stuff at Coastal Wealth. Go check it out. I met the people. I would trust them. I think they're good people. So, I'm not sponsored, but I'm just giving you my vibe that I thought it was a really cool company. And go check out Jeremy's stuff. And Jeremy Straub, thank you so much for being here.
Awesome. Thanks, Patrick. Appreciate it.
FOMO. If you like today's show, please be sure to rate it and recommend it to your friends. And as always, you can find me on Instagram at Patrick J. McGinnis, on Twitter at PJ McGinnis, and on the web at FOMOsapiens.com or PatrickMcGinnis.com, where you can get all kinds of free resources to live a more decisive and entrepreneurial life. FOMO. Want more FOMO Sapiens and FOMOnday? Head over to FOMOsapiens.com, where you can listen to past episodes, learn more about the show, and find out how to advertise. You can also connect with me on Instagram at Patrick J. McGinnis and on Twitter at PJ McGinnis.